Hello viewers and welcome to Worldview, a program designed to bring you up to speed with trending developments the world over. My name is Xavier Robert, reaching you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital. And on our top stories today, Germany signs deal to acquire Israeli-made RO-3 hypersonic missile system that will become key part of Europe's defense against air attack. New York appeals court rejects former President Donald Trump's bid to delay civil fraud trial against him in case that leaves his business empire in jeopardy. At least 25 people reportedly killed and more than 80 injured by suicide bomber targeting procession marking the birthday of Islam's Prophet Muhammad in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. Details of these stories and more in a moment. First on Worldview today, Germany has signed a deal to acquire the Israeli-made RO-3 hypersonic missile system that will become a key part of Europe's defense against air attack. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius says at a press conference alongside his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant that the signing of the deal is the largest in the history of Israel and its defense industry. Away from that, U.S. President Joe Biden has appointed 2 Nigerian Americans as advisors. According to reports, the appointees Osaje Imasoje and Chini Ogumike are part of the 12 members of the President's Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement in the United States. And while congratulating the duo on the appointment, the chairperson of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabriero, said the recognition and appointment into the 12-member Advisory Council is a motivation for other Nigerians and Africans in general. Away from that, House Republicans have branded the first day of the impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden a success, saying they justified their case. But expert witnesses called by Republicans cautioned there was not yet enough proof for impeachment. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced the inquiry over allegations Hunter Biden engaged in improper business dealings that benefited the president. The White House has called it a political stunt, but the formal impeachment inquiry grants lawmakers greater legal authority to investigate possible misconduct after months of Republican probes failed to unearth any concrete evidence. Republican James Comer of Kentucky, chairman of the Powerful Oversight Committee, said the panel would examine more than 24 pieces of evidence, including emails and bank records, which he said would reveal Joe Biden's corruption and abuse of public office.
To date, the House Oversight Committee has uncovered how the Bidens and their associates created over 20 shell companies, most of which were created when Joe Biden was vice president, and raked in over $20 million between 2014 and 2019. We've also identified 9 Biden family members who have participated in or benefited from these shady business schemes. The McCarthy House Republicans have now opened an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. By opening an impeachment inquiry, our investigation is now focused on whether President Biden engaged in impeachable offenses under the U.S. Constitution. It empowers Congress, elected by the people, to continue providing the answers, transparency, and accountability that the American people demand and deserve.
So let's get it straight. We're 62 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America, and Republicans are launching an impeachment drive based on a long debunked and discredited lie. No foreign enemy has ever been able to shut down the government of the United States, but now MAGA Republicans are about to do just that. Despite years of investigation, is the smoking gun that connects Joe Biden to his never-do-well son's corruption. It's scandalous to use impeachment to establish a counterfeit moral equivalence between President Biden, an honorable public servant who has never been indicted or convicted of anything in his career of more than 50 years in public life, and Donald Trump, a twice-impeached president who's recently been found in court to have sexually abused and defamed a woman and fraudulently inflated the value of his real estate properties while facing 91 criminal charges in 4 separate indictments. I think
This
they're
is going to
peddling
be an
discredited
informative
lies.
hearing for you, Mr. Raskins, because we were going to present evidence.
What?
Meanwhile, a New York appeals court has rejected former President Donald Trump's bid to delay a civil fraud trial against him in a case that leaves his business empire in jeopardy. The decision paves the way for a trial to begin next Monday. Trump and 3 of his adult children are expected to be called as witnesses in the case. The decision comes after New York Judge Arthur and Gordon this week ruled Trump was liable for business fraud. Reports say that New York Attorney General Letitia James has accused Trump, his 2 adult sons, and the Trump Organization of inflating the value of their properties by more than $2 billion to suit the needs of their businesses. Away from that, Sweden's Prime Minister has summoned the head of the armed forces to help curb a surge in gang killings. The 2 men and the country's police chief will meet to discuss what role the military could play. It comes after 12 hours which saw 2 men shot dead in Stockholm and a 25-year-old woman killed in a blast at home in a town north of the capital. It is not clear exactly how the military might get involved, but previous talks suggest soldiers may take over certain policing duties to allow officers free up resources for crime fighting. At least 25 people have reportedly been killed and more than 80 injured by a suicide bomber targeting a procession marking the birthday of Islam's Prophet Muhammad in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province. The Balochistan's Minister for Information, Jan Achakzai, announced a 3-day mourning period for the dead as a result of the attack. Reports say while the celebration of the Prophet's birthday is accepted by the majority of Islamic sects in Pakistan, certain denominations view it as an unwarranted innovation. Moving on now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has met one of the most senior former commanders of the Wagner mercenary group, who the Kremlin says now works for the defense ministry. Andrei Troshev is a former aide of late Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was killed in a plane crash in August. His death came 2 months after Wagner troops briefly marched on Moscow. The Kremlin said President Putin asked Troshev to oversee volunteer fighter units in Ukraine. Addressing Troshev, the president said he could volunteer units that can perform various combat tasks, above all, of course, in the zone of a special military operation in reference to Ukraine. A Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, told newsmen that Troshev now works in the defense ministry. The meeting comes as Putin attempts to reassert his authority following Wagner's mutiny in June. Moving on now, Swiss prosecutors have charged Gulnara Karimova, the daughter of Uzbekistan's former president, with running an international crime syndicate that laundered hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes. The authorities have seized assets worth £700 million in the probe, covering the period 2005 through 2013. Karimova has been in jail in Uzbekistan since 2014, convicted of embezzlement. She denies the bribery charges, which concern lucrative telecoms contracts. She formerly had a high profile in the ex-Soviet state in Central Asia, wielding great influence as daughter of its autocratic leader, Islam Karimov, who ruthlessly crushed opposition. She had her own jewelry line, ran an entertainment television channel, and released pop singles under the name Gugusha. The Swiss indictment also targets an unnamed businessman who ran the Uzbek branch of a Russian telecoms firm. Karimova is accused of taking bribes in return for access to Uzbekistan's telecoms sector and of laundering the money through Swiss bank accounts and an elaborate network of accounts in other countries. Her fake organization was known as the Office. Besides fraud, the group allegedly used violence and intimidation in its operation. Away from that, Dianne Feinstein, the California senator who served for more than 3 decades and was a trailblazer for women in U.S. politics, has died aged 90. Feinstein was the oldest member of the U.S. Senate and voted as recently as Thursday. For months, the California Democrat had faced questions about alleged memory and cognitive issues. In April, she was admitted to hospital after a minor fall at her home, the latest in a series of health concerns. The former San Francisco mayor had previously announced plans to retire at the end of next year, but resisted growing calls for her to step down. In a statement made after she announced her retirement plans, U.S. President Joe Biden called her a passionate defender of civil liberties with a strong voice for national security policies that keep U.S. safe while honoring her values. Away from that, the leaders of 9 Mediterranean and Southern European countries, including France's Emmanuel Macron and Italy's Giorgia Meloni, have met in Malta for talks focusing on migration. The summit comes on Friday, a day after the UN Refugee Organization said more than 2,500 migrants had perished or disappeared attempting to cross the Mediterranean so far this year, substantially more than at the same point in 2022. But it also comes as EU interior ministers finally made headway on Thursday on new rules for how the bloc handles asylum seekers and irregular migrants, with a deal expected in the coming days. Long in the works, there was new impetus to reach a deal after a sharp rise in asylum seekers landing on the tiny Italian island of Lampedusa earlier this month. Meloni's far-right coalition government, elected on an anti-migration ticket, has clashed with both France and Germany as she presses other EU countries to share the burden. So far this year, the number of arrivals at Lampedusa has already passed 133,000, but Meloni and Macron have sought to ease tensions in recent days and met on Tuesday in Rome on the sidelines of the state funeral for ex-Italian President Giorgio Napolitano. After the break, security and intelligence services in Burkina Faso says it foiled an attempted coup in the country. Stay with us for details on this and more right after the break.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by gross level. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my
this
lord.
an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Many thanks for staying tuned. Now, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on former Sudanese Foreign Minister Ali Kati and 2 companies, one based in Russia, yet accused of undermining the peace in Sudan. Kati, who served in the government of ousted President Omar al-Bashir, is a leader of the pro-military Sudanese Islamic movement. The Department of Treasury said in a statement that Kati and other former regime officials are now obstructing efforts to reach a ceasefire between the Sudanese Armed Forces SAF and the Rapid Support Forces RSF. The U.S. says GSK worked with Aviatrade LLC, a Russia-based military supply company, to arrange the procurement of parts and supplies. The move is the latest round of sanctions imposed by Washington after war between the Army and the RSF broke out in mid-April. In a separate development, the Security and Intelligence Services in Burkina Faso says it foiled an attempted coup in the country. The military government made the announcement in a statement read on national TV by its spokesperson, Rimtalba Ouedraogo. According to the statement, the junta said an attempt by some army officers to seize power from Captain Ibrahim Traoré and plunge the nation into chaos was thwarted. They further announced that officers who were allegedly involved in the plot had been arrested. The military government said it would seek to shed all possible light on the plot, adding that it regretted that officers whose oath is to defend their homeland have strayed into an undertaking of this nature. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso said that 4 officers had been detained a day after the military government announced it had thwarted a coup attempt. Military prosecutor Ahmed Ferdinand Sontara said in a statement that the 4 are suspected of involvement in a conspiracy against state security. The 2 others are on the run, according to the statement. Recall that the junta said on Wednesday that the intelligence and security services had foiled a coup attempt the previous day. The military government said it would seek to shed all possible light on the plot. It comes nearly a year to the day since junta leader Captain Ibrahim Traoré seized power in the West African nation on September 30, 2022. His takeover was the country's second coup in 8 months, both triggered in part by discontent at failures to stem a raging jihadist insurgency which swept in from neighboring Mali in 2015. Now, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has approved a $1.3 billion loan to help Morocco improve its preparedness against natural disasters, 3 weeks after an earthquake killed nearly 3,000 people in the country. According to reports, some Moroccans criticized the government for its handling of the 8th September earthquake in the High Atlas Mountains, calling the response slow and disorganized. Moving on now, 7 soldiers have been killed in Niger's southwest in an attack by suspected rebels, and 5 others died in a traffic accident while trying to respond to the assault. The deaths on Thursday come as former colonial power France prepares to withdraw a counterinsurgency force stationed in the country at the request of its new military leaders who seized power in a coup 2 months ago. Niger's Defense Minister Salifou Modi said in a statement that a military unit had been violently attacked by several hundred terrorists in the town of Kandaji on Thursday, adding that 7 soldiers were killed in the fighting. The Tillaberi region where the attack took place is located in the so-called 3 borders zone where Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali meet. The area is a hideout for rebels, particularly those affiliated with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. The country's southwest, where it shares a border with Nigeria, is similarly plagued by attacks by Boko Haram and its dissident branch, the Islamic State, in West Africa province ISWAP. Now, the United Kingdom and Canada have joined the United States in condemning plans by Myanmar's coup leaders to hold tightly controlled elections, as Taiwan voiced strong criticisms of the regime's atrocities and crackdown on its opponents. Their condemnation is an indication of the hardening divisions between China and Russia on one side and Western nations and their allies on the other, as well as self-ruled Taiwan's willingness to champion democratic causes on the global stage. Myanmar's generals who seized power from the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi and her National League for Democracy (NLD) in February 2021 have promised to hold new polls and unveiled revised election laws earlier this year that led to the NLD's dissolution. Moving on now, the United States National Security Agency (NSA) has announced the creation of an artificial intelligence security center that will oversee the development and integration of AI capabilities within U.S. defense and intelligence services. Director of the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command, General Paul Nakasone said on Thursday that U.S. officials were aware of the increasing importance of AI in the national security landscape, and the opening of the new center was part of steps to shape the future of AI technology in the security, defense, and intelligence sectors. The NSA chief said it was imperative that the U.S. maintains its leadership in AI development and the malicious foreign actors be prevented from obtaining U.S. innovations in AI. Moving on now, China is spending billions of dollars a year to shape perceptions of China through influence, censorship, and disinformation in a large-scale campaign that could threaten global freedoms, is according to the United States. Beijing, it said, has invested billions of dollars to construct a global information ecosystem that promotes its propaganda and facilitates censorship and the spread of disinformation. This is according to the State Department spokesperson in a statement on Thursday following the publication of the Global Engagement Center's report. The report noted that Beijing used a number of deceptive and coercive methods to try and influence the international information environment and bend the global information environment to its advantage. In recent years, Beijing has stepped up its influence campaigns on social media platforms such as X and YouTube, particularly over hot-button issues such as Xinjiang, the South China Sea, and Taiwan, while its state media has set up editorial partnerships with traditional and online media elsewhere in the world, sometimes even buying control of outlets. The U.S. report identified 5 main elements of China's global media strategy: leveraging propaganda and censorship, promoting digital authoritarianism, exploiting international organizations and bilateral partnerships, pairing co-optation and pressure, and exercising control over Chinese language media. Taiwan, the self-ruled island Beijing claims as its own, has long been on the front line of China's media war. Foreign Minister Joseph Wu told media earlier this month that Taipei was preparing for Beijing to step up its misinformation and disinformation campaigns ahead of the presidential elections in January.
Draws on publicly available sources as well as new information to expose the PRC's tactics, techniques, and processes to pursue that objective. It describes how China, the People's Republic of China, has invested billions of dollars to construct a global information ecosystem to promote propaganda, censorship, and disinformation. We're pleased to release this first-of-its-kind report on PRC information manipulation. It's a comprehensive look at how the PRC and the Communist Party of China attempt to distort the global information space to advance its geopolitical objectives. When you look at the pieces of the puzzle and you put it together, you see a breathtaking ambition on the part of the PRC to seek information dominance in key regions of the world. On issues the Chinese government deems sensitive, the PRC has employed online and offline intimidation to silence dissent and encourage self-censorship. The report draws on publicly available sources as well.
Now, more than 2,500 people have died or gone missing while trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe so far this year. The UN Refugee Agency said, while approximately 186,000 people have arrived in European countries during the same period. Rowan Menig-Dewele, director of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees UNHCR office in New York, told the UN Security Council on Thursday that of the 186,000 who had crossed the Mediterranean, 83%, some 130,000 people, landed in Italy. Other countries where people who had crossed the Mediterranean had landed included Greece, Spain, Cyprus, and Malta. The number of those who died or went missing during the dangerous sea crossing has surged this year compared with last year, the Security Council was told. Now, the number marked a large increase over the 1,680 who died or went missing in the same period in 2022. Menig-Dewele said the UN Refugee Agency saw no end in sight to the lives lost at sea and on land routes to Europe, which are similarly dangerous. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. My name is Xavier Robert, reaching you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom. You've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of our programming today. Bye for now.